voice is really greater in the mix of time and the chicken body flavor. A poem could be safer, but the voice is really greater in the mix of time and the chicken body flavor. A poem could be safer, but the voice is really greater in the mix of time and the chicken body flavor. A poem could be safer, but the voice is really greater in the mix of time and the chicken body flavor. Bobby sang the silent ear. Bobby sang at my silence. Bobby sang the black onyx of the tie-dye moccasins of Yoruba. Bobby sang the black jewel son of Cobb's of Borneo. Bobby sang the mint julep of the red clay of Georgia. Sang the toe-tapped aqua shoes of Brother Hines. Bobby sang the silent ear, sang the turntable mind. Bobby sang the force of Everton, sunshine, trimming rainfall. Singing the secret war pit of the twisted line. Singing the native wicked wide-eyed look of Jupiter. Bobby sang, I hear you. A poem could be safer, but the voice is really greater in the mix of time and the digging Bobby flavor. A poem could be safer, but the mix is really greater in the mix of time and the digging Bobby flavor. A poem could be safer, but the voice is really greater in the mix of time and the digging Bobby flavor. A poem could be safer, but the voice is really greater in the mix of time and the digging Bobby flavor.
Bobby Sang by Ron Allen. Welcome to the Qumran Report. May the peace and blessings of the life-giving creative spirit be upon you and upon your family. My name is Melvin Ishmael Johnson, coming at you live from Morris Media Studio. Our call-in number is 1-323-293-3375. This week on the Qumran Report, we will talk about economics in the black community with Dr. Reverend E.J. Pierce from My Econ Personal Finance Success Company. And we have in the house with us Brother Haroon. Welcome to the Qumran Report.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Welcome.
We will also talk about the economic philosophy of Booker T. Washington, Marcus Garvey, Professor Harold Cruz, and Dr. Claude Anderson. Now I'm delighted to have us right here in the studio, Dr. Reverend E.J. Pierce. Welcome to the Qumran Report. Dr. Pierce, can you let us, let's go around and the table and introduce ourselves first.
Greetings, family. Dr. Reverend E.J. Pierce, Executive Vice President with My Econ, the Personal Financial Success Company. Also, Program Manager with Senior Solution Outreach Program that are dedicated in assisting seniors that are making their years more comfortable, which should be their golden years.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Absolutely. Greetings, family. My name is Haroon Sad Unfur Ami Ketra Yad Kuti, also known in the community as Mr. Joshua Hunt, also Executive Vice President with My Econ. It's a great pleasure to be here today. Thank you for having me.
Okay. Glad to have you guys in the studio. Now, EJ, can you talk a little about your background and how you started My Econ?
Well, once again, like I said, in mentioning the senior solutions, I've been around in the community for quite some time when I saw when the economy crashed in 2008. Mm-hmm. And at that time, I was working in the mortgage industry. Mm-hmm. And a lot of seniors had invested at the right time. Let's talk about baby boomers. And baby boomers are retiring at an alarming rate at $6,000 a day, according to the U.S. Census Bureau. So when they invested in homes, 401ks or whatever pension programs that they were designed to grow over their lifetime so that way that they can create a nest egg. Well, when the economy crashed, so did their income. And as my mom said, respect your elders. So I realized that the best that I can do is help serve the seniors in our community. And when I partnership with My Econ, the Personal Financial Success Company, 12-year-old company based out of Atlanta, Georgia, mm-hmm. and the concepts and the strategies that they implemented, I was truly impressed. And I said, this is something that our seniors could use. Mm-hmm. And I began to connect with the leaders that were part of My Econ, learn of the strategies, and their number one strategy is called income shifting. income shifting is basically taking money out of the right pocket and sticking it in the left pocket. It's not complicated. With the right and proper training, anyone can do this, especially in our community, because we were all taught to work. And our seniors, they worked hard all of their lives, 40, 50 years. And now their income is being threatened. I had a senior to tell me the other day, I'm afraid that I'm going to outlive my income. Mm-hmm. What do you say to that? What's the response to that? Well, we need a plan. That's the response. Yeah. Because of your circle of influence. The youngsters will listen to the elders. They may not respond as though we appreciate their responsiveness. Like Big Mama said, you're too near me not to hear me.
Right.
Okay. Brother Haruk, tell us a little about your background. How did you get involved with My Econ?
Excellent. Actually, Dr. Pierce was the one that shared this information with me, life-changing information. And in all honesty, when it was first presented to me, I didn't really see the connection between the information and myself. So I'm definitely glad I took another look at it once, he just consistently presented the information to me again. It became more clear what My Econ was providing, which is simply financial literacy or financial education.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah. So can you tell us a little about your background?
Sure. I do a lot of work at the Koresh Unity Center of African Spiritual Science right here in Los Angeles. Bird. Yes, with Reverend Bird, senior minister. So with that, I basically perform, basically what I've done is merged the economic transformation we're going through with our spiritual or cultural awareness transformation as well. Mm-hmm. So with that, I've created a work study group called Metamorphosis Monday, and it's been going on for the past couple years now at the center. Been getting some great feedback and just excited again to keep that going. So.
Let me ask you this, Dr. Pierce. How can My Econ help with financial success for the individual and for the families as a whole?
First of all, we have to acknowledge that there is a problem. Mm-hmm. If there's not a problem, then there's no need for a solution. Right. My Econ, the personal financial success company, is into solving problems. What problem is that? Personal finances. See, all our lives we've been taught, go to school, get a good education so you can get a good job. Well, jobs are taxed at the highest level. My Econ teaches income shifting. We want you to change your thinking so you can change your life. No longer thinking like an employee, but begin to think like a business owner. Change your thinking, change your life. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. The strategy is simple, personal. Right. My Econ, the personal financial success company, so therefore let's make it personal. Right. We're not talking about the world's economy. We're not talking about the nation's economy.
That's right.
We're talking about my economy. I have to acknowledge the fact that my current lifestyle must support my future lifestyle. How can I do that? When there's an elephant in the room and nobody wants to address. Dr. Reverend E.J. Pierce, I'm a hard-headed Baptist wrapped in a Catholic blanket. My mother was a Baptist. My father was a Catholic. I know church. I don't know finances. So as I created the ministry and I'm hearing the same problem, our lack of money is costing us money.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Let me ask you this then. What are the advantages of a home-based business? Can you talk a little about that?
The advantages of having a home-based business, you get to write off your lifestyle. IRS compliant. If you want to hide something from people, put it in the book. Okay? Because go to school, get a good education so you can get a good job. Many of us who went to those schools were not taught how to read. And when my son came to me and said, it's frustrating because I don't know how to articulate the language, that's real world. Mm-hmm. We can call words out, but are we really comprehending? This is information that has been public information ever since legislature has been in existence. Mm-hmm. The government rewards people who are business owners. Mm-hmm. You don't have to go out and get another building. You already have a building, which is where you reside. You don't have to go and get utilities. You already have that. So in the manual, the IRS manual, it tells you. And my econ has assisted us in taking advantages of the home-based business by showing us where those codes are and how to interpret those codes and apply them to our personal life.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Brother, what are your thoughts on the home-based business?
I've benefited greatly from the strategies. The first one that was shared with me was something called the minimized taxes strategy. With that one strategy alone, I've pretty much changed my financial life and just was able to utilize that new income to do things like pay down debt and just, in essence, shift my income from cash flow negative to cash flow positive. Mm-hmm. You see what I mean? Yes.
How important is the internet to a home-based business?
Well, being that a lot of the products and services we provide through my econ is digital, so the internet plays a great deal of what we plays a big part in what we do.
Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts on the importance of the internet to a home-based business?
It's phenomenal. Let's use that word, phenomenal. It is what it is. Mm-hmm. For those of us who are not used to technology, well, technology has been with us ever since man has been evolving. So what we have before us is a push-button society. Mm-hmm. And my econ has found a strategy. Because if I was to create an automobile, that's tangible. You buy the automobile, now I have to create another automobile. But with the internet and the digital divine, you create a digital product one time, it's a cookie cutter process. It doesn't take a lot of manual labor to reproduce that digital product. Mm-hmm. You just push a button.
That's right.
It's today's technology that will keep us informed because it's the information highway.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Let me read something about Booker T. Washington, who's very important in terms of group economics. His name is Booker T. Washington, born April the 5th, 1856 to November the 14th, 1915. He was an African-American educator, author, orator, and advisor to presidents of the United States. Between 1890 and 1915, Washington was the dominant leader in the African-American community. Washington was from the last generation of black American leaders born into slavery and became the leading voice of the former slaves and their descendants. They were oppressed in the South by disenfranchisement and Jim Crow discriminatory law enacted in the post-Reconstruction Southern states in the late 19th and early 20th century. Washington was a key proponent of African-American business and one of the founders of the National Negro Business League. His base was the Tuskegee Institute, a historically black college in Alabama. As lynchings in the South reached a peak in 1895, Washington gave a speech known as the Atlanta Compromise, which brought him national fame. he called Black progress through education and business ownership. Now, one of the key individuals involved with Booker T. Washington was Andrew Carnegie. Andrew Carnegie, I guess his economic philosophy is found in a book called Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
In it, he articulated 17 success principles. Probably the most important one was developing your mastermind team based upon harmony. And he also financed Booker T. Washington's activity. They mentioned its Negro Business League, which was so important to the development of the largest African American community in the United States during the 20s, which was Harlem. Because one of his students would go there and set up a real estate company and begin to buy property in mostly the all-white Harlem. And then because of the white flight, he began to bring black families in, and that's how Harlem grew. Also, Carnegie mentioned one of his principles in a book called How to Increase Your Salary, which was, I thought was a little small book. A lot of people don't talk about it, but I thought it was so far advanced in terms of that. But let me ask you this. In relationship to Andrew Carnegie being the foundation of Booker T. Washington, and later on we're going to find out that Booker T. Washington was the economic foundation of Marcus Garvey thought in terms of that. But what is your thought on the economic state of the black community here in Los Angeles?
It's in shambles.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about living on a fixed income. And when you look at a fixed income, it's a mindset. My econ teaches you to change your thinking so you can change your life. The more money you make, the more money you spend. And if you have maxed out in your salary on your job, guess what? You're on a fixed income. So until you find someone such as Booker T. Washington did, who were able to allow him, with some information, to change his thinking, to change his life. Because when we talk about that period, that's the Reconstruction period. It was brother against brother. The carpetbaggers came from the North to help rebuild the South. The Southerners didn't like it. They called them carpetbaggers. Well, for me, Ivy Stokes, who is my friend, my mentor, who took $10 and created multi-millions, he's sharing that information with his people. Until you get in front of my econ, you will never understand the principles of what our ancestors have built for us and have set in place. I look at Ivy Stokes as a carpetbagger. Okay, his story is that he left college broke. He went to college broke. He went up north. He has a mentor like Carnegie that gave him some financial information, and he came back and he prayed about it, he fasted about it, and the Lord said, teach what you know. So what did he learn? Financial principles. My econ is about financial principles that is going to turn this black economic community around. Because you're doing my econ all day. Mm-hmm. You're just not getting the credit that the government says that you are entitled to. Mm-hmm. What a concept.
Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts on the economic state of the black community here in Los Angeles?
Well, I've been residing in Los Angeles for a little over 5 years now, and for what I can tell, as Dr. Pierce shared with us, it's in shambles. So what we could absolutely use more of is financial literacy. So it was once told to me that success leaves clues. Mm-hmm. So money talks, but building wealth whispers. So we have to do a better job at listening to those clues when they present themselves. You see what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because when you look at Los Angeles, one of the things that always amazes me was the Skid Row situation.
Absolutely.
When you look at LA as a whole, which have I guess the black population always been around 10 or 11%. And then, but when you go down to Skid Row and you look at which huge amount of homeless, you see about 90% African Americans down there. Yeah. What do you think is the connection with that? Is it what you was talking about earlier, the lack of financial literacy?
Yes. I didn't find out about Booker T. Washington until I was in higher education. I was in college when I found out about a lot of our ancestors who were successful, independent business owners. Network marketing has been around longer than Jim Crow because coming out of the South, navigating the underground network, you had to network. There were people who had our best interests in mind, but somewhere along the line, we became miseducated. Go to school, get a good education so you can get a good job. Remember, and on those jobs, technology is replacing most of us. Foreigners who are coming here, we are training here, are replacing us. Why? Because they're not going to complain. So since we've been here, we've been miseducated that we have rights. Yeah, right out the door to Skid Row.
And then you take a hugely overwhelming black community like where we in now, the Leimert Park.
Yes.
That seem to experience all kind of economic, in terms of unifying. And what are your thoughts on the area where we're at now, Leimert Park?
Well, due to a lack of financial education, a lot of what's known as gentrification has been taking place, but that's nationwide, and we're not on the right side of gentrification because of our lack of knowledge. So with that, we have to get on the right side of the fence, or just make ourselves aware of what we're up against, so we have a better idea of how to maneuver around these obstacles.
And the thoughts on the economic potential of this community where we sit in, called Leimert Park?
Leimert Park has great economical potential. But here's the problem. Marketing through media has created a sector of individualism as opposed to collectivism. And those who've been around Leimert Park a long time ago know that there were many opportunities for us as a people to buy property. But because of self, I'm not going to do business with you. There's a solution. My econ is a solution. When we show you how to change your thinking, shift your income, make it personal. So if there's a building in Leimert Park that's up for sale for $2.3 million, come on, just do the math. See, man lie, woman lie, numbers don't lie.
Not at all.
See, I don't need the entire $2.3 million. I just need some people who believe in the economical vision of Leimert Park and is willing to grow.
Right.
Others come in and buy us out. Why? Because they are collective, not individuals. That's why gentrification is taking place all over the nation. But my econ, the personal financial success company, says that when I show you how to take care of your personal finances, now you can partnership with me and 20 others. Now we can buy the neighborhood.
So a group economic concept.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Okay, well, let me, last week, they released some files on President Kennedy. And a lot of people were surprised because it was so much information in there that dealt with Marcus Garvey and J. Edgar Hoover. And, Garvey is a proponent of that group economic concept. And I'd like to play a clip from a little tape that I did a few years ago. And this tape was called The Forgotten Tribe of Shabazz. And I just want a little clip from that.
Now, after J. Edgar Hoover used this methodology to bring down Marcus Garvey and destroy the Universal Negro Improvement Association, as I mentioned, he would perfect this into a technique that would be used in the 60s, most notably against Malcolm X and against Dr. King. Now, what was it really about Minister Malcolm X and Dr. Martin Luther King that made them such a threat to the American ways of life in the eyes of J. Edgar Hoover? To that question is found in a memo by J. Edgar Hoover in response to a discussion about Dr. Martin Luther King. This memo, in which J. Edgar Hoover would send around to most of his trusted FBI agents, would become known as the Hoover Memo. The memo reads, "To prevent the rise of a Messiah who could unify and electrify the militant black nationalist movement, Malcolm X might have been such a Messiah. He is a martyr of the movement today. Martin Luther King, Stokely Carmichael, and Elijah Muhammad all aspired to this position. Elijah Muhammad is less a threat because of his age. King could become a very real contender for this position should he abandon his supposed obedience to white liberal doctrine of nonviolence and embrace black nationalism." Now, this was a FBI memorandum that was issued on March the 4th, 1968. And keep it in mind, just a month, a few weeks after that, up in April, the assassination of Martin Luther King in Memphis. The goal of this memo was to prevent the rise of a black Messiah who could unify the black masses. Hoover never forgot his experience with Marcus Garvey and the fear that the Garvey movement caused. This was the foundation for the creation of the underground program that I mentioned called COINTELPRO, whose sole purpose was to neutralize any organization deemed un-American. Both Malcolm X and Dr. Martin Luther King had the potential to duplicate the success of the Marcus Garvey movement. As long as Malcolm X was part of the organizational structure of the Nation of Islam under the control of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, he was no threat to duplicate the success of Marcus Garvey and the Universal Negro Improvement Association. The same in relationship to Dr. King. As long as Dr. Martin Luther King was under the conservative, nonviolent movement of civil rights, he was no threat to duplicate the national and international success of the Marcus Garvey movement. But with the awarding of the Nobel Peace Prize in his opposition to the Vietnam War, this took him, like Malcolm X when he separated from the Nation of Islam, out of the arena of civil rights into the arena of human rights, from the national scene to the international scene. Moved by Malcolm X and Dr. Martin Luther King from the national arena of civil rights to the international arena of human rights, which signed their death warrant.
Yeah, so J. Edgar Hoover, Dr. King, he saw in Dr. King the potential for another Marcus Garvey. And since Garvey stressed unity, that would lead to group economics. Any comments on that?
Absolutely. Group economics is extremely important because united we stand and divided we fall. Correct. So with that being said, of course, pooling our resources would make more sense, you know what I mean, than trying to do anything on a grand scale on an individual basis, if that makes sense, you know what I mean? But again, it is personal, but our goal is personal financial success. And as that was explained to me, that's just simply having enough cash flow to support whatever your chosen lifestyle is. And while you're still in your working years, but also into your retirement years, because of course we've created a lifestyle for ourselves, and like we already spoke about briefly, the lifestyle, we get to write that off with the home-based business opportunity. And it only makes sense, but again, we have to shift our mindset in order to shift our lives.
So what is the stumbling block in terms of the concept of group economics in relationship to the black community? What do you see as a stumbling block?
Lack of power is our dilemma. And when I say that, it's because the historical documentation that we just heard, when money moves, people get paid. We as a people, collectively, it's been said that, we have a certain amount of resources. My econ teaches that we have 4 obstacles. Okay? We got inflation, we got taxes, we got less than ideal cash flow, decisions, and the most important thing, debt and big business. So we already know that we're losing a third of our income to taxes. My econ says we have a solution. So what you borrow, because you lost it, so you go borrow to try to make up that loss. So there's interest that's attached to that debt. So you really are falling short. So you'll never catch up. And most of us realize that every month of the year, big business is in our pockets.
Absolutely.
So money is moving away from our community because the young people today, what you got new? See, that's our dilemma, lack of power. We don't have the discipline. I have a 1999 Ford truck, but my neighbor just got one straight off the lot, 2017. But mine's paid for. He's got a note, plus he's got interest attached to it. But my econ teaches, as a business owner, it's a business expense. It's not personal anymore. So the business works, the business spends, and the business is taxed.
In terms of a write-off.
Yes.
Now, how do nonprofits fit into this concept?
Government created nonprofit to be able to assist the people where government falls short. It's another way of rewarding the Lord loves a cheerful giver. So when you tithe, tithing does not necessarily mean in a particular institution, such as church. Most of us tithe in organizations that are assisting people who are in need. But we know today, according to the internet, that most of these nonprofits who are getting all the resources, their directors have 6-figure incomes.
Without a doubt.
Misappropriation of funds. And they only use 10% of the funds collected to assist the people. So they say the other 90% is for operation, due to breakdown. But the government says, we will reward you. My econ says, when you get a home-based business, and if you don't have one, we will give you one. We will show you how to. because the personal financial success company, My Econ, will become your home-based business. Mm-hmm. So now the government will now reward you.
Now let me ask you. Let me ask you this. Let's get back. I'm going to get back to Marcus Garvey. How was Marcus Garvey able to create this unity among the people during his time period? And we know unity is the basic element of group economics in terms of working in a unit. What do you think it was that allowed him to achieve this?
Marcus Garvey had a philosophy. Once again, he carried a message that had depth and weight that held the interests of the persons that he was talking to. Let's take the Negroes back to Africa. Mm-hmm. Marcus Garvey did more than that. He created commerce. He didn't have ships. He didn't have boats. He had vessels. That's an economical power that we lost because of, well, corruption. Mm-hmm. You kill the head, the body will die. So my econ says each one teach one. Mm-hmm. What we teach you, you teach others. Mm-hmm. Because when you kill the head with all the knowledge, then the body dies because it doesn't know how to feed itself.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Let me play a little short 2-minute clip from Marcus Garvey talking about his thoughts on the African American, the black community during that time.
Absolutely.
Well, okay. Well, we get thought I had a clip in there on Marcus. Let me just read something quick about Marcus Garvey. I know most people should be familiar with him. Marcus Garvey, born 1887, passed June 10th, 1940. He was a proponent of black nationalism in Jamaica, especially the United States. He was a leader of a mass movement called Pan-Africanism, and he founded the Universal Negro Improvement Association. And he also founded the Black Star Line, you was talking about a minute ago, a shipping and passenger line which promoted the return of descendants of the slaves of America back to Africa. Although most black leaders condemned his method and his support for racial segregation, Garvey attracted a large following. The Black Star Line went bankrupt and Garvey was imprisoned for mail fraud in the selling of his stock. His movement then rapidly collapsed. We know J. Edgar Hoover led the movement from it. Let me see, can I play that little clip on Marcus Garvey in his own words?
I want you to make up your minds as I made up my mind years ago. Make up your mind that you will rise to the knowledge of your soul. Because of your ignorance, you cannot understand and decide between good and evil. You don't know whether you're doing right or wrong. With a greater knowledge of life, you're able to appreciate all things around you. I'm able to gather you here because I understand you. Understand your neighbor, your wife, your children, and you will be able to live in harmony with each other and get the best of the life. The early Africans were able to be the fathers of our civilization because they persevered in their object. When we hear the civilization of the Alexandrias, of the Timbuktus, the creation of the black man in the early ages, do we realize that the civilization we now enjoy was handed down to the present century? But the black man went back to sleep and is still sleeping. We are trying to awaken you to the true consciousness of yourselves. You young black men, you young black women, may we not appeal to you knowing you as we do. To turn over a new leaf, rejecting the ignorance, the foolishness, the childishness that has been your part for these many years. We've looked into your faces, you growing manhood, the rising generation, and no serious thought can we see registered on your countenance but the thought of vulgarity. I've been in your presence and my heart bleeds for you, the conduct you reflect. I've listened to your dirty language used to express yourselves when you could have expressed yourselves in good form. Can I appeal to the black manhood to turn over a new leaf? I'm ashamed of my black manhood, and what I've said to the black man, I also said to the black women. Your conduct is disgraceful. Young women whose personality spells respectability. At the least provocation, the filthy words they utter would almost make you turn and run away from them. A race that cannot conduct itself any better than that is bound to go down in defeat, is bound to go down in death, in hell, and in degradation.
Yeah, Garvey, amazing that was almost 100 years ago, talking like that. What are your thoughts on what he was talking about the black community then?
Basically, that the basis of all true knowledge is the knowledge of ourselves. So, if you recall when I was speaking earlier, it wasn't until I made the information personal to me or saw myself in the information that I began to have success or began to see some of the fruits of the labor, or you know what I mean. But just make it personal. So if of course if you don't see yourself successful, if you can't visualize that, you're probably not. Mm-hmm. You know.
Mm-hmm.
Most teachers who pass in this realm of existence are ahead of their time. We've heard that. Mm-hmm. They're way ahead of their time. Mm-hmm. You know, even as babies, that child is special. You see, that information that is planted in that child grows up in a state where it is nourished and not oppressed. So when it gets to that point where the ancestor says it is time, see, water seeks its own level. Mm. So let's talk about blood memory. You see, because there is a Moses, there is a Joshua, you know, there is an Elijah. That's always the prophet, Noble Drew Ali. Many of them that gave thought. Get your mind off of material things and start thinking about spiritual things.
Yes.
And in this economy, what Garvey was saying back then is that you can't rub that automobile on your chest and feel good. You need a man or a woman who is going to cultivate and nourish your relationship. That is the definition of success, being a part of something that is larger than yourself. So we have a nation of individualism as opposed to collectivism. And what Garvey was saying back then, the message is still the same. Stop being so selfish. Think of how you can do the greater good for the greater number of beings. Because when you give, it goes back to tithing. It's the law of reciprocity.
Yes.
It will be returned unto you. Because as the scripture says that I give you power, Deuteronomy 8:18, I give you power. I give you power to gain wealth. And most people who read the Bible don't even know what's in the Bible.
That's right.
We are a Christian nation, but yet we are taught to live in poverty. I'm a minister. I know the Bible. I don't know finances. Therefore, I need to bring somebody in to do some finances. This is the same thing. Garvey and his company went bankrupt. Why? Because that was a component of business that he lacked. Financial education. And those who were around him was faking the funk.
Let me, I want to touch just a little on Harold Cruz, which I think is very important. He was Harold Cruz, born March 8, 1916, passed March 25th, 2005. He was an African American academic who was an outspoken social critic and teacher of African American studies at the University of Michigan until the mid-'80s. He was sort of like almost one of my mentors when I was going to school back in Michigan. But he wrote two very important books. First one was called The Crisis of the Negro Intellectual, still worth reading, where he predicted that the Brown versus Board of Education made all of your civil rights organization invalid at that point. From that point on, they will become invalid. He got a lot of backlash for that. But to me, his most important book, which came out after that, dealing with economics, was called Plural but Equal. And he predicted that in the future you will have what you call dual ethnic economic communities. And that's what I see Los Angeles, because when you look at Los Angeles, you see most of which all of your ethnic communities exist here, probably except the African American community, is that most of these ethnic communities exist on two levels. They have their own community, and then they also exist in what I call the shopping mall community, where everybody mix. But the African American only exists in the shopping mall community. They don't exist in where they have their own ethnic group economic community in relationship to that. So I think Los Angeles is the best laboratory to study that, because we see it happening out here. We talked about it a little earlier when we see the African American making up about 10 or 11% of the community.
Right.
But at the same time, when you go down to Skid Row, which reflect the poverty and the real shame of this city called Los Angeles, when you can have all of these people living in tents. And but African Americans, about over 90% of those living in the tents is African American. I think it's related to what Harold Cruz was talking about. And then also want to talk about Dr. Claude Anderson, who he have what they call, Dr. Claude Anderson is president of Powernomics Corporation of America Incorporation and the Harvest Institute. Powernomics is a company, publishes books, produces the multimedia presentation, which he explains his concept. But what I wanted to ask you is how can my econ head into that direction so it can be on a larger level in terms of impacting, especially the African American community here, and then probably on a larger national and international basis? What would it take to lay the foundations for that?
My econ has already laid the foundation.
Can you talk a little about it for us?
It's called income shifting. Minimize your taxes, eliminate your debt, and invest for your future. See, my relationship is that when I give Joshua $200 for a project, and then Joshua would just forget all about that I exist and that I even gave him the $200. So my personal animosity against Joshua because I didn't make a wise investment decision. So I'm going to treat everybody that looks the same way that Joshua looks. And I'm going to seek outside. I'm going to be knocking on doors, kicking down doors to get into a community that doesn't look like me. My econ says you drive a car, you have travel expense, you eat out, you entertain. That's a business expense. Write it off. My econ is already in the laboratory. It's changing millions, of lives.
Right.
It's putting millions back into families as far as economically. Los Angeles is the staging ground for my econ. We're doing it here. I've been engaged with my econ for over the past 2 years. And it has not only changed my life, but when I'm able to help a family of 5 bring an additional $6,000 back into their home a year, and then not only that, the IRS says that you can claim child tax credits. Hire your children. 5 times 6, that's $30,000. Minimizing your taxes. Wake up, LA, because we're here.
How Tell our audience, listening community, how if the ones that want to get in touch with you to find out more about it and get involved with MyEcon.
You can call 310-770-7104. Myself or one of my associates will contact you and give you further information. If you can watch TV, it takes 30 minutes to watch a sitcom, but it takes 22 minutes to get educated on financial literacy. And we'll get you that information so that way you can change your thinking and change your life and also move from the mindset of being in poverty and creating generational wealth, as all these great scholars before us and with us, Claude Anderson.
Exactly. Which brings me back to something that I remember that Dr. Claude Anderson shared with us on the documentary 7 a.m. He said, in order for your money to be considered wealth, it has to pass through 3 doorways. So wealth is 1, what you own, 2, what you can control, and 3, what you can pass down to the next generation, which dictates ownership, right? So if your money cannot pass through all 3 of those doorways, no matter how much it is, it could be $1 million, it's not considered wealth, right? So that's the mindset we have to shift towards. And again, if there is any further information you would like as far as income shifting or joining the work study group Metamorphosis Monday, you can also reach me at 424-625-1420. And again, we'll get back with you. So.
Let me play a little short clip from Dr. Anderson. I think it's a 1-minute clip because I think it's so important.
The issue is not social integration, it's economic integration. But again, nobody listened. The black leadership didn't listen then. The black civil rights leaders didn't listen then. They continued to pursue a trail of social integration. And social integration meant that I am willing to give up everything I got to sit in somebody else's restaurant, to go to somebody else's school, to live in somebody else's community, to work with somebody else's business, to be next to them. I'll give up everything I got. And I said, you're wrong. Because if you go into social integration, it's going to kill yourself. You're going to become a deprived, poverty-stricken people if you do it. Because you see, social integration is going to strip you. It's going to strip you of your businesses. It's going to strip you of your communities. It's going to strip you of your schools. It's going to strip you of your music. It's going to strip you of your sports teams, your basketball teams, and football teams. It's going to strip you of your culture, your heritage. It's going to strip you of your uniqueness as slaves and Jim Crow segregation statuses that you had, where you can demand reparations and demand justification. You're going to strip.
Okay, I want to play a little clip from some African brothers who have a documentary that's coming out. And I hope to put you in touch with them because they're talking about trying to connect the economic community here and back in Africa.
Yeah, startups.
Yeah. So the documentary is called Going Home, and we'll play that little clip for them.
They say home is where the heart is. But what about where the heart used to be?
Yeah, that's powerful.
Yeah, I had a chance to talk to the producers and stuff. I talked to them about MyEcon. They're very interested in it, too. They have a couple production companies here. Let's go around for quick final comments.
Just watching that clip, America, help Africa, help America. Through the vehicle, MyEcon, the personal financial success company that teaches income shifting, that teaches business income shifting, that teaches passive income shifting. Okay, all these are strategies that we teach. Stop giving money to big corporations and let's learn to invest in ourselves by using this vehicle.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
It's really about building relationships, and the fact of the matter is, or the bottom line is, once we develop a better relationship with money, we won't have the same ills or that we're having as far as a whole in the community, the economic strife that we're going through. So it's just a mindset, you know.
Okay, a special thanks to Dr. Reverend E.J. Pierce and Brother Haru. Please listen to past shows of the Qumran Report by Googling in Qumran Report. Thank you for tuning in to the Qumran Report, and from your host, Melvin Ishmael Johnson, may the peace and blessings of the life-giving creative spirit be upon you and upon your family. Our next show, we will talk about how to empower the women's of Skid Row. My special guest will be Suzette Shaw. So I close out with the song that opened the show, Bobby Sang by Ron Allen.
But the voice is really greater in the mix of time and the digging body flavor. A poem could be safer, but the voice is really greater in the mix of time and the digging body flavor. The poem could be safer, but the voice is really greater in the mix of time and the digging body flavor. A poem could be safer, but the voice is really greater in the mix of time and the digging body flavor. Bobby sang the silent ear. Bobby sang at my silence. Bobby sang the black onyx of the tie-dye moccasins of Yoruba. Bobby sang the black jewel son of Cobb Borning. Bobby sang the mint julep of the red clay of Georgia, sang the toe-tapped aqua shoes of Brother Hines. Bobby sang the silent ear, sang the turntable mind. Bobby sang the force of Everton, sunshine, trimming rainfall, singing the secret war pit of the twisted line, singing the native wicked wide-eyed look of Jupiter. Bobby sang, I hear you. A poem could be safer, but the voice is really greater in the mix of